Today I'm going to show you how to complete the assembly for the Lab2b. This will complete Lab 2 entirely, and what we'll do is we'll place the 6 components that we made in Lab 2a into our assembly file to construct the cabinet. To do this, we'll click File and then New, and we'll select Assembly and then OK. Now it's going to pop up a dialog box asking us what we want to open as our base part or our fixed part, and we'll click Cabinet Shell and we'll place that in world space here. Now you'll notice next to Cabinet Shell in the parts tree here, you'll see there's an F. That F means that this item is fixed. This component here is fixed in space. It cannot be moved. So we'll use this as our base part. Every other component will be able to move in relation to this cabinet shell, and we'll assemble it based on this shell. So to do that, we'll click Insert Components. We're going to click on Hinge A and Open, and we'll place it somewhere near our shell. Now, I find it's easiest if you manipulate your parts first before you try to assemble them. So to do that, I'll right click on the hinge A, I'll click Move with Triad, and I'm just going to turn it to make it match up roughly with the orientation that I wanted when it mates to the shell. It doesn't have to be perfect because you will use the mate constraints, which will put it all together for you, but just roughly in the the direction of your shell and how it should mate will make things a lot easier for you. Next, we'll click Mate up here at the top under the Assembly tab, and we're going to click the bolt hole, the actual cylinder reference. You'll see it highlights. We'll click that, and then we'll click the matching bolt hole on the hinge, just like that. Okay, so you can see here it's automatically selecting concentric either in this pop-up tab or on the left, and just press OK and exit out of there. So now we can see that our hinge is rotating around that constraint, which is putting this cylinder and that cylinder concentric, so they're on the same axis. You can see just like that. But we still have too many degrees of freedom in that our component can move forward and backward and can rotate. So to fix the rotation, we'll mate the second cylinder bolt hole here to this bolt hole. Same thing, concentric, click OK, and now we have no rotation, but we can move forward or backward. To fix that last degree of freedom, all we have to do is select the face of the shell and the face of the hinge and create a coincident mate. You can see it's here, coincident, or on the left, and press OK. Now our component is fully constrained to the shell, and we can't move it. You'll see here if I try, it's not going anywhere. Okay, next thing we're going to do is insert the second part of the hinge B, and we'll place it somewhere close in space. Once again, right click your new part and set it up in the orientation that you want. Now keep in mind, the hinge orientation is very important when you're assembling these files. You have to have your hinge orientated properly, otherwise what will happen is you'll get a conflict where your cabinet your cabinet door is going to enter this cylinder here, the hinge. You'll see what I mean if you do it improperly, but just for now, follow along with me. If you do have that error, take note of how my hinge is orientated with hinge A. Again, click the cylinder reference there, cylinder reference here, and you'll see we have the concentric constraint. Perfect. Then we'll click the outside face there of the cylinder on hinge B, and we'll click the inside face here on hinge A. We get the coincident mate. OK, and there you go. So now you can see this is the proper hinge orientation. You'll see there these two faces line up perfectly. That's exactly what we want. If you have the orientation excuse me, if you have the orientation where your hinge is flipped, and now your face is along here. You're going to have to fix it so it ends up like this. Okay. Next thing we'll do is insert component and click the hinge pin. Open that and place it in space. Now we'll mate the cylinder of the hinge pin to the cylinder of the hinge itself, and OK. Now you can see here my hinge is kind of stuck in the middle, sorry, the hinge pin is stuck in the middle of the hinge. I can just select the hinge pin and just drag it out. Okay, so I can actually take a better look at it. And now what I'll do is I'll select the outside face of the hinge and the inside face here of the hinge pin, and you'll see they'll mate perfectly as if I was to actually bolt this all together, just like that. Alright, next thing I'll do is place the door by selecting insert components and cabinet door and placing it in space. Right click on the door and give it the rough orientation, right? That way it's easier to work with. Then I'll click mate and click on the first bolt hole in the door and the first bolt hole in the cabinet, or sorry, in the hinge. Press OK. I will select the, again, second bolt hole in the door and second bolt hole in the hinge. We'll get concentric, press OK. Now I have to select the two faces. So one thing you can do is select the face of the door first, then right click the door and click hide, and then you'll have easier access to the hinge face, which I can then select. And now you'll see here it keeps the highlighted face of the door shown, just the outline, and you can see I have the coincident mate. Press OK and it's done. Now my door is still hidden, so I can just go back to my parts display here on the left, right click the cabinet door and click show components to get that back. You may have to hide components as you're going with the assembly, so just remember, if you do that, just go back here to your part, right click and click show components. Next thing I'll do is insert the fastener pin. Okay, click mate, click on the cylinder of the fastener pin and the cylinder of the hinge. You can see there it all lines up nice. Press OK. Then click the inside face of our fastener pin and the outside face of the hinge. Perfect. Now I suggest when you're selecting the cylinder reference for the fastener pin to select the cylinder on the hinge. If you end up selecting the cylinder of the door, it's going to make things a little bit more complicated later on when we do the copy components. Insert a new fastener pin, select the hinge cylinder, that's the short cylinder here, and the fastener cylinder, concentric, OK. Click the outside face, click the inside face, OK. Insert a new component, fastener pin, open and place it. Click mate, click the cylinder of the hinge, click the cylinder of the pin, concentric, OK. Click the outside face of the hinge, whoops. Click the inside face of the pin, OK. Now you guys can see here that I'm manipulating my view a lot with the middle mouse button. It is absolutely crucial that you have a mouse at this point, because you're going to have a very, very difficult time trying to manipulate the view as I am now without a mouse. So just the trackpad and keyboard won't really be sufficient when you're doing assemblies like this. It'll be very frustrating for you because you're not going to be able to move the view like I am here without the middle mouse button. Okay, so there we go. We have the hinge complete and we have it mounted to the door and the cabinet shell. So we'll back out of this. We'll then select those components the 4 fastener pins, the hinge pin, and hinge B and hinge A. So everything except for the cabinet door we're gonna have selected. Then we're gonna right click all of these while they're all selected and click copy with mates. So now you'll see it's asking which components we want to copy. We want to make sure hinge A and B, the hinge pin, and the 4 fastener pins are selected. Then we'll click next. Now it's going to ask us, okay, there are some constraints or some mates related to these components that are not within those components. So the mates that are between, say, this hinge pin and the hinge, that's fine. It's not going to ask me to redefine those because I'm copying all of these components together. But all the mates that are between, say, the hinge and the cabinet door or the cabinet shell, those I'm going to have to redefine at the new location. So this is why I suggested when you select your pins, don't make the pins mated to the concentric cylinder of the shell or the door. Make it in reference to the hinge and you'll save yourself some time. If you didn't do that step, don't worry, it just means you have to define a couple more mates. So what do I mean by define mates? You can see here it's highlighting the cylinder in the cabinet shell and it's saying, okay, select a new reference at the new location that is essentially the same as this. And so what I'm going to do is just move all the way over here to my left hole on this set of hinge mounting holes, and I'm going to select that cylinder. And so now you can see it dragged all these new components based on this setup here. It put them over at the new set of mounting holes. Now it's asking me again, select this reference, this cylinder reference in the cabinet shell. Where's the new reference to match that one? And of course I know that that's going to be this one here, the right hole, and I'll select that. Now it's asking me, okay, what about the coincident reference between the hinge A inside face and the outside face of the cabinet shell? Well, that one's the same, so I can just click on the cabinet shell and you'll see there it's placed it all in space. Now it's asking me, okay, what about the reference between the cabinet door left mounting hole and the hinge cylinder? Well, same thing. I'll just zoom in here and select the cylinder of the cabinet door. And then of course it's going to ask me for the last cylinder right here, and I'll do the same by just selecting the cylinder. And then again it's going to ask what about between the face of the cabinet door and the face of the hinge, and I can do that just by selecting the door. Now it's going to tell me component has been placed, press OK to place another component. So I'll click the check mark there. Now it's going to say, okay, do you want to do another one? And of course I'd like to do another one, but first thing I'll have to place another door. So I will exit out of this. So now we can see here this door is good to go. We have our hinges completely constrained to the door. They're also constrained to the shell, and this half of the assembly is fine. Now what I'll do is I'll just rotate over here to this side, and I'm going to insert components and click cabinet door and OK. I'll place it in space and I'm just going to rotate it so we have a better look at it. There we go. Okay. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, just roughly in the area of where it's going to be placed. So right here I have access to those bolt holes. Then I'm going to go back to the hinge. So hinge A, hinge B, the 4 fasteners, and the hinge pin. You can see here I'm essentially just selecting the one that we copied over because all the components line up nicely here in the tree. I'm just going to select this, right click, click copy with mates, and it's going to ask me, okay, which components do you want? Well, I already selected them, so I'm going to go next. Now you'll see here it's asking for the left bolt hole in the original assembly over there. What I'll do is I'll select this left bolt hole here in the cabinet and press OK. Now it's asking me for the concentric reference. I'm going to select the right bolt hole, right, because over there we're selecting the right one, Now it's asking me for which face. I'm going to select this face. Okay, so we can see there, if we selected the right references, it should already have this hinge set up exactly as it was on the flip side. So just keep in mind when you're selecting your references, remember the orientation of the hinge on this side of the cabinet. So here we have left and right. Then when we rotate, we're going to select the left and right holes. Okay? So now if I were to flip around, okay, it's going to ask me for the left hole on the cabinet door. Well, that one's this one right here. Okay, now it's already snapping here in a very odd situation to the hinge. Now we have the right hole. I'm going to go back here. Now this is where it can get kind of confusing. I suggest, if you have to, reorganizing your door to make it work for you, or change the transparency of the door so you can see through it. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to click here, change transparency, so I can see the holes of my door. And I'm going to select the inside hole, which should be, of course, it's very difficult to see. I'll have to hide the cabinet shell. There we go. Whoops. There we go. And the inside. There we go. Okay. Okay, so it may have messed up the component placement. Let's see. I believe it did. That's okay. This will be easy to fix later on, so we'll just get the rest of the hinge down while we're here. And then we can fix any issues that we have as we go along. So I should be, yep, component has been placed. Would you like to place another? Nope, I'm going to fix this error first. So the issue I'm having here is I must have selected the wrong references when I was placing the hinge. So I'll just rotate my door back to where it was and try again. Whoops. Okay. There we go. So once again, select all these hinge components. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 pins. Hinge A and B, and the hinge pin. There we go. Right click and click copy with mates. Let's try this again. If you have any issue with the mate, as you can see, nobody's perfect. You know, even with my experience, I'm not perfect and I messed it up. Just go back and start again before you over constrain your assembly, and then you're going to get really frustrated thinking, what did I do wrong? It happens all the time. So just make sure that when you're selecting your references, try to be, you know, spot on the first time. But if you make a mistake, just go back and start again. No harm, no foul. So we'll select the right references this time. Now it's asking for the right hole, right? I'll select this one here. And of course the face. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do, just in case, because I don't want to make that same mistake again, I'm just going to click OK. and close. So I'll just manually assign the last 3 constraints from the door to this hinge. If you want to keep going with that other dialog box, power to you if you get it working. I'll just concentric that and select the cylinder again, and that cylinder, concentric that, then click the face of the door and the face of the hinge, and there we go. Okay, so that worked out a lot easier for me. I'm not sure why here, but these pins obviously are not mated correctly, so we can go ahead and just fix that easily by selecting the pin themselves, finding it here in our tree, then going to the mate in assembly 2, and we'll just right click and click flip mate alignment on the concentric, and there we go. That's okay. Alright, so you see how it did that there? It just flipped the alignment of that mate. Then I'm going to select this hinge pin here, or sorry, the fastener pin. I'm going to find its concentric mate, right click that, and click flip mate alignment. Boom, there we go. Okay, so now that's fixed any errors in this hinge. Now I'll select those hinges again, so the fastener pin, hinge A, hinge B, the remaining fastener pins, and the hinge pin on this side, right click, copy with mates. Now because the orientation is on this side, it should be a lot easier. It should match up perfectly with this side of this shell. So we'll just click next. And it's looking for the left hole. I'll select the left hole. Okay, it's looking for the right hole. Select the right hole. Alright, now it wants the face, select the face, boom, there we go. Bottom half is perfectly done. Now it's looking for the left hole in the door. Just zoom in here. There's the left hole. I'm assuming it's looking for the right. Yep. Zoom in here, select the right hole, and it wants the face. Press OK. And click OK, and done. Okay. So there you have it. That is the full assembly for Lab 2. So this concludes Lab 2a and 2b. In Lab 2a, we created all these components, these 6 components. Then in Lab 2b, we assembled it all. Like I said, if you get frustrated with the assembly, just stop, take a breather, and start whatever mating you're doing again. This side you saw went by pretty easily. Copying it over to this side, very easy. However, when we flipped and tried to copy the components on the opposite rotation, we had a little bit of trouble. That's fine. Like I said, you're going to encounter trouble as you're assembling. Unless you're a real whiz at SolidWorks, you'll always have one mate that you just misclicked and you selected the wrong reference, and it could throw everything off. If that happens, just close the dialog box you're currently in, press escape, make sure you're not selecting any references, and then start again. Yeah, that's basically all I can say about assemblies. Remember, just try to think of how you would actually assemble the part in real life. Try to make the constraints and the mates as close to real life mates as possible. And definitely have a mouse, otherwise you're going to have a hard time manipulating the view as you saw me do in this video. You guys are going to be expected to submit something similar for your mini design project. Mini Design Project 2, which is available on Blackboard, where you'll be asked to create a new design for the doors and create a door handle. Now if you create a door handle, you're going to have to assemble the door handle as well in SolidWorks in this assembly. So just keep that in mind when you're creating your handle. You'll want to create the references in the handle, so your bolt holes. You may have to create a new fastener if the current fastener pin is too big or too small. So just keep that in mind when you're creating your parts for your design project, that whatever parts you create, you're going to have to use in the assembly. So just think ahead a little bit and make sure that you put your bolt holes and make sure that they fit with the current fasteners, or create new fasteners if you need them. And then once you're done that, you'll be able to assemble it just like we did here.